This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 54, Balancing Being Real with Being Professional. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is January 16th, 2014. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode number 54 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and on Stitcher, so if you're listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. That means you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your computer or your smartphone or your tablet or your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. In last week's podcast, we celebrated our first podiversary with some reflections on the first 12 months of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to click on over to iTunes or to Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. So that brings me to today's topic. Today, we will be talking about how to strike a balance between being real and being professional as you create and share your content. But first, let's check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. Just last week, Google made an announcement that is leaving some folks a little bit uncomfortable. Apparently nowadays, when you use Gmail, you can send emails to your Google Plus contacts without actually having their email addresses. So if you start typing an email, you know how when you start typing in the recipient's name, it will automatically fill in people in your address book? Well, now it will include those Google Plus contacts. So those people who are in your circles in Google Plus, you can now actually send emails to if you use Gmail. Now, it will never actually give you that person's email address, but if you can email them anyway, what's the difference? Fortunately, if you would rather opt out of this function, and I have chosen to do so, you can turn that option off so that your Google Plus contacts will not be able to email you. And, I looked all over the place. Everybody's they're telling you how to do this, but nobody does. So I figured it out, and let me pass that on to you real quick. If you go to your Gmail settings, you will see a new field called Email from Google Plus. And under that field, you will see the question, who can email you via your Google Plus profile? And again, this is in Gmail settings, not in general Google settings. So you have to be going to Gmail. So if you click on that, or if you look in that field in that drop down, your choices are, number one, anyone on Google Plus. Number two, extended circles, so people who are in the circles of people who are in your circles, so second and possibly third degree connections. Your third option, hey Hermione, is people who are only the people who are in your circles, and the fourth option is no one. Now, I thought about just kind of leaving this as is, but the more I thought about it, the more I said, people can contact me through social media. I do not need to be open myself up to another opportunity for spam. So I went ahead and changed my option to no one. So that's how you opt out if you choose to. If you have any questions about that, just hit me up. Another new development is from Buffer. That is the app that allows you to schedule your social media posts in advance. And what I love about Buffer, I use it all the time, is it automatically spreads things out for you. So if you say, I want to tweet 3 times a day, it will automatically spread those out. Really, really cool. I love it. So Buffer is now integrating some brand new features. It now integrates with Google Analytics. It allows you to track campaigns. So you can input a campaign and actually track it through Buffer. And you can also track the growth of your fans and followers, among some other really interesting features. Now, this new package of capabilities is part of their Buffer for Business offering, and that does involve a monthly fee. And there are several different price points available. So I suggest if you want to find out more, you go to bufferapp.com. bufferapp.com. That's bufferapp.com, and find out more. And I will also provide that link in the blog post. Okay, on to this week's content hit of the week. This is a piece of content that I found really useful and I'm happy to recommend. This is from Heidi Cohen, and if you're not following Heidi Cohen's blog, I highly recommend it. She's got some great stuff to share. And this week she posted 5 key elements that make the best content marketing. And she really did narrow down 5 elements that really separate the good from the great content marketers. And then she actually goes on to inquire from 19 experts, and she asked them to share their favorite pieces of content from 2013. And these are some very well-known names in the content marketing world, and they really share some interesting things. Some are kind of tried and true. We know Blendtec is doing some great things, but there were some new names in there of content marketers who are really rocking it that I had not heard of. So I recommend this post from Heidi because it's like getting 2 really, really good blog posts in one. Again, the title is 5 Key Elements That Make the Best Content Marketing, and I will provide that link in our own blog post for today's episode. That's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something that you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please shoot it on over to us so we can share in next week's newsfeed. So on to this week's main topic, and I have to confess, this topic has been on my topics to cover list for this podcast for a while, and I've been putting it off, and I think it was because I wasn't quite sure how to go about it. And I think it has to do with the fact that this issue, the balancing being real with being professional in your content, is really something each of us needs to figure out for himself or herself, or for our own businesses, and it's not necessarily something I can give you a formula for. But what I can do is just kind of raise some awareness about this issue and the need to really give it some thought and find your own balance. So first I want to talk about being real. And we've talked on this podcast a lot about authenticity. In fact, we had an episode dedicated to authenticity. And basically in 2014, people are really over the slick, photoshopped, we are the best thing since sliced bread image that brands have been putting out there since the dawn of advertising. We don't want to show you our flaws. We want to look perfect. We just want to be this idealized image of this company. And these days, people really want to do business with people they know and trust. And quite frankly, they cannot get to know you if every single piece of content has been written by your PR team, if it's been reviewed by 3 different committees, if it's been approved by your branding manager. No, people want you. People want the real you. And they want to get to know your team. They want to see behind the scenes at your office and your trade shows and all the other stuff you do. They want to hear about your mistakes and your disappointments. They really want to, they really appreciate being invited into your world and really seeing your realness and your humanity. So I won't say much more about that because we did a whole episode on authenticity, like I said. And if you want to go back and listen to that, it is episode number 28, and it aired back on July 18th, 2013. And we've gotten a lot of really good feedback on that episode. So if you happen to miss it, I recommend going back and giving it a listen. But bottom line, we need to be real. We need to show our real selves, our true selves. On the flip side of that is the fact that we still need to be professional. So remember, people need to know us and trust us. So we don't want to take that practice of being real into any areas that might cause our audience to question whether we're trustworthy, to question our professionalism. And, it's kind of it's an issue that's hard to get your arms around. So what I'm going to do is talk about a few situations, a few hypothetical scenarios to kind of give us something to think about, give us a way to illustrate the point and to think about how we might adapt our own content. So the first scenario I want to talk about is employee events. So this might be team building activities, this might be outings, maybe holiday luncheons or other occasions where you as a group take a break from work and enjoy some time together. So let's say, for example, that as a team building activity, you've had a big project, you've been working like crazy, and you decide that on Friday afternoon, you're going to close up shop at noon and take everybody out to go bowling. Now, some people would say, the best way to handle that is to kind of sneak out and not let anybody know what you're doing, leave somebody in the office to take phone calls, and just, pretend it's business as usual. And they might say they would never post about that on Facebook or Twitter or put those photos on Instagram, etc., because to their mind, customers would see that as goofing off and think that you're not serious about your work. On the other hand, some people, and I would be more inclined to see it this way, think it's perfectly fine to talk about how you are having some team building, rewarding your employees for all their hard work, because number one, it sends the message that your company cares about its people. And if a company cares about its people, it usually also cares about its customers. Number two, it shows that your team enjoys spending time together, that you enjoy being together. And that probably means that if you enjoy being together, you probably enjoy working together and you work well together, which of course makes a team collectively more productive. And then finally, it shows that you're all human beings. It shows that you're not automatons that sit at a cubicle and work, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. It really shows you as flesh and blood human beings. So, a picture of that account service rep who is always dressed impeccably, showing her strapping on a pair of nasty bowling shoes and throwing a gutter ball, that can be very endearing, and clients can really enjoy seeing something of that because it shows a different side of you outside the office. So, the question is, should you post on Facebook if you decide to treat your team to an afternoon of bowling? My knee-jerk response is yes, it's perfectly fine, but as with all things in this area, it depends. You really need to think it through. You need to think about, number one, think about the brand that you've built on the social web. Think about that approach that you outlined in your content marketing strategy, and just ask yourself if this is in line with that. It might not be, and it might be best to kind of keep it on the down low. You need to think about the different reactions that customers may or may not have. Would you have a customer who, would cast cast a suspicious eye on that and think, these guys are just goofing off. Some customers are like that, and if you have some of those or one or more of those, again, it might be better to think twice about that. And then finally, you need to be mindful of how you present something like this. So instead of going out on Facebook or Twitter saying, hey, we decided to knock off early and go bowling, you might present it as, wow, our team has been working so hard, and we've had several different projects going on. We decided to reward everybody with some fun at a local bowling alley. That's how I would prefer to present it, because it's the truth, and it shows people why you're doing what you're doing, and it is a legitimate response. Our people have been working hard, and we want to reward them. So that's my take on employee events and team building and things like that. Another issue we can look at is admitting mistakes and disappointments and things that didn't work out as expected. A few episodes ago, I spoke with Catherine Carr over at Haiku Deck, and we were talking about storytelling. And one thing she says is that people love a good failure story. And when she presents at conferences and talks about Haiku Deck, they tell about the early iterations of the business, the things that they tried that they fell flat. I think they went through 3 different business models before they hit something that really worked. And people really love that. People really respond to that. It's engaging because it puts you on par with the people you're talking to. We've all made mistakes. We've all had disappointments. And it really makes people kind of look at you as a fellow human being rather than this this behemoth who can do no wrong. And from a personal standpoint, I recently wrote a blog post in December of 2013 called My Biggest Flop of 2013. And the reaction I got was amazing. I got some great comments, both on the post itself and on social media, but also in person. I was running around delivering Christmas gifts to clients, and people said, oh man, I saw that post about your flop. Man, I would have a hard time picking one big mistake to talk about. And then we kind of chatted about that a little bit. But like I said, making mistakes, being disappointed in something, having something not work out is something we can all relate to. So when we talk about these failures, it's a bonding moment with our audience. We're saying, hey, we're just like you. We make mistakes. Not everything works out. We get disappointed. And that is a far cry from the old advertising approach of we've got it all together. We can do no wrong. We are as perfect can be. Back in those days, mistakes, really, if you made a mistake, you swept it under the rug and you hope nobody noticed. And if somebody did notice, then you would immediately shift into damage control. I know from an internal standpoint, the last corporation that I worked for decided to drop like $4 million on an advertising campaign, and it bombed, and nobody ever took responsibility for it. It just kind of went away. Now, this isn't something that you would talk about on your exterior content, but with your employees, you might want to just kind of say what happened and say, hey, we messed up. We thought this was going to really work well for us, and it didn't, and we're trying to do damage control and come up with something else. But again, sharing failures, a great way to be authentic, to show your humanity, and like I said, to bond with your audience. But here again, we have to be prudent. Like the example I talked about just now with the huge advertising campaign that flopped. You might want to talk about it. You might not want to drop the $4 million dollar amount, but that's something depending on your brand, depending on your customers, you might want to mention. Off the top of my head, I'm going to come up with a hypothetical example. Let's say you run a bakery, and let's say the order for a wedding cake got lost or got forgotten, and you found out about it and you had to scramble to get it done on time. That makes a great story. Running around, trying to put the cake together and trying to rush through the icing while still making it look good, et cetera, et cetera. But if you shared that as it happened, it might leave people wondering if they should do business with you. It's a great story, but they might be thinking, wow, are they going to lose my order for my wedding cake? And I have to scramble to get that done or not deliver it at all. It might make people think twice about whether they should trust you with their business. On the other hand, if something is an honest mistake and doesn't necessarily reflect badly on you, I would think about going ahead and sharing it. And, I was thinking about this podcast. I was thinking about the movie This Is Spinal Tap. I don't know if you ever saw it, but there's this one segment where they're putting on it's about this heavy metal rock band, and they're putting on this elaborate stage show, and the theme is Stonehenge. So it's the whole mystic druid culture with their rock music, and so they're putting together the set for this epic performance, and their manager draws a sketch for the set designer, and I think they're meeting over coffee, and he grabs a napkin and kind of sketches out and says, this is what we want. And the only thing is, instead of 18 feet, what he wrote on the sketch was 18 inches. He wrote the two little marks instead of one. So the designer does what she's asked to do, and they wind up, they're getting set to do this epic rock show, and they deliver the set piece, and it is a Stonehenge that's 1.5 feet tall. So, and it's terribly funny segment, but I think that's an example of a great story that, if you were comfortable with it, could be rolled into a great piece of content, a great blog post or a great mention on social media. But here again, we need to be careful, not only about what we share, but about how we present it. So if you're talking about a mistake, I think the number one thing you need to keep in mind is to end that discussion on a positive note. Talk about how you and your team rectified the situation, and most importantly, share what you learned from it, because then your audience can learn from your mistakes and benefit from that as well. Third issue I want to talk about when we talk about the line between being real and being professional is what I like to call extracurricular posting. So your content vehicles are a great place to help your audience get to know your team and about what's going on in their lives, about what's important to them, and it's perfectly okay. Again, on Planet Rachel, you've got to make your own decisions here, but it's perfectly okay to talk about some of their personal goings-on. For example, one of my clients recently said, hey, two of the ladies who work on our team just got engaged. And they said, we want to announce this on social media and we want to have some fun with it. So we put together a nice little post about how love is in the air and congratulating our brides-to-be, etc., etc. Another example, one of my big corporate clients has people who put together a team and ride in the MS-150. And that is a bike race between Houston and Austin that takes place every year. And it's a huge event. And many businesses, small and large, put together teams and they do this race as a team. They get jerseys that have their logo on them. Again, great thing to talk about. It shows that, it shows that you're concerned about the community because the riders do raise money for multiple sclerosis and, they post photos of the riders with their bikes. We talked about how much money they raised for this charity, which is, of course, totally separate from the business, et cetera, et cetera. But, these two examples, the engagements and the riders in the MS-150, both of those could be taken too far. For example, it's nice to know that Mary Sue just got engaged and wish her well. I don't necessarily have to hear about the China pattern that she picked out, even though that might have been a hot topic of conversation around the office. And with the charity ride example, it's great to know people on your team are doing this. It's great to post some photos along the way if they're taking photos at different rest stops. But I don't necessarily need mile by mile updates, and I don't necessarily need to see on your Twitter feed, Joe just passed mile 18 and Betty is back at mile 15, it can be taken too far and you can get into overload and have people shaking their heads going, dude, this is really nice, but I really don't care. So those are just a few of the scenarios I wanted to bring up and talk about. Like I said, finding that line between being professional and being real is one thing that each of us has to decide for ourselves, and what we share, how we share it, how we respond to people commenting about it. It's an individual thing, and it depends on your business, depends on your brand, depends on your team, depends on your industry. It's something you really need to work out for yourself. So I hope all that makes sense. If you have any questions or anything to add to that conversation, I would love to hear from you, and I will provide that contact info at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. Today's tip is very closely related to our main topic because today I want to talk about your profile picture. That is the picture that is tied to your social media accounts. Probably I would guess that for your business accounts, you would have your logo or something that represents your business. But it's important to think about the picture that you use for your personal accounts, especially on things like LinkedIn, where you are very closely tied to the business you work for. And here again, it's so important to have a profile picture that strikes that balance between being real and being professional. And the thing about profile pictures, we tend to set it and forget it. We put one up, when we get a picture that we like and just kind of forget about it. And it's easy to forget that this picture is coming up next to everything that you post, at least from your personal account. And like I said, if you are a solopreneur or a consultant, it might also be the face of your business, depending on how you're set up. So on the one hand, we don't necessarily want the classic financial planner just sitting there looking at the camera saying, hi, I'm professional and trustworthy. And the classic, gray background and the quarter turned to the left, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, we probably don't want that selfie that you took at the New Year's Eve party a few weeks ago. And I remember back when I worked in corporate, my boss, actually for her LinkedIn profile, had a picture of herself on the beach with her hair blown in the wind. And it was a beautiful picture. She looked great in it, but at the same time, not really a professional photo that you would want to have tied, especially to your LinkedIn profile. Now, I'm of the opinion that it is well worth the investment of hiring a professional photographer to work with you on your profile picture, because this is going to be a headshot that you can use on your social media, on your website, on as a headshot for any speaking engagements that might come up. It's really going to be an investment that will pay off on numerous levels. It's so great to have one, because sometimes people ask for photos for, if you're going to If you're going to do a guest blog post, people might want your photo for that. So it's really a multitasker, as Alton Brown would say. And so it's really worth the investment of working with a professional photographer. And once you get that photographer signed up, this person can work with you to create a really perfect and unique profile picture, one that is professional but also shows your personality. You know, if you want to have some props in there related to what you do. At one time, I had a picture taken with me holding an iPad, and the screen was blank. So what I can do is I can pull that picture up and go into Photoshop and put anything I want on there. You know, I put "We Love Content" for our banner for Resonance. So really play with it, have fun, make sure it represents you well and represents your business well. And again, I cannot stress enough, work with a professional photographer to come up with an image that reflects your style, your personality, and still presents a professional image. Okay, campers, that is it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate that. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our blog at resonancecontent.com/blog, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. If you'd like to email me a question to cover in our tip of the week, you can contact me anytime at rachel@resonancecontent.com. And if you'd like for me to come speak about content marketing to your business or your organization, you can find out about my latest talk at contentmarketingspeaker.net. As always, I like to leave you with a quote, and today's is from Abraham Lincoln. He said, quote, "Character is like a tree and reputation like a shadow. The shadow is what we think of it. The tree is the real thing." Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.